If you guys want extra Titans content, including full breakdowns of every game that I don't cover on YouTube and access to my Titans film library, make sure to check out my Patreon, patreon.com/noflagsfilm. I just finished transferring my fully charted and organized film library over to Huddle, which allows me to share it with my patrons. It's by far the easiest and most efficient way to watch film because you can filter plays by a bunch of different categories, and in just a few clicks, you've got the all 22 right in front of you. Maybe you want to watch every time Christian Fulton was targeted in man coverage, or every time the Titans ran a flush stunt out of an overload front. You can add as many filters as you want, and those plays will be right there along with a statistics and tendency sidebar that updates in real time. So if you're interested in watching some Titans film, but you don't have 6 hours on a Tuesday to grind the all 22, I would definitely recommend checking this out. My guest for today's episode is Justin Graver. Many of you probably know him as Titans Film Room on Twitter. He is the co-founder of Broadway Sports Media, associate producer at NFL Media, and mastermind of the Tennessee Tickle Monsters. Justin, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. The Tickle Monsters, I didn't come up with it. I just boosted it.
You were the media ringleader of it, though.
Yeah, for sure. I brought it to NFL Media and made it a thing around the NFL, which was they put it on the TV show on their Friday network show, which I had no part in that, but the producer.
Yeah, I saw that. What I really appreciated about that was that so many of the nicknames that were being thrown out there were just so cringy and forced, and by really like amping up the whole Tickle Monsters thing, it kind of brought the conversation down to where it belonged and just kind of derailed the whole thing, kept us from being, the fierce foursome or whatever, whichever one they were trying to get going. So,
part of the Tickle Monsters appeal is that it's like making fun of nicknames in general, because
right,
obviously everyone who supported Tickle Monsters, like nobody thinks that that's like a great menacing nickname. It's the
exactly. Yeah, I mean, no good nickname has ever been focus grouped and voted on. It's someone calls someone a nickname and then it sticks because it's a good nickname.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was kind of, we were suffering from our own success at that point, being on a win streak. We didn't have anything to argue about. Now I think we have some bigger problems. I first just want to ask you kind of like, what made you start taking your Twitter account seriously and kind of getting involved with Titans analysis? Because I remember you were one of the first, if not the first, like Titans related Twitter account that I followed back in 2016 or whatever. So, I've been reading your Mariota breakdown threads, since the beginning. So what kind of got you started with that?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So back then I was really interested in making highlight videos, and I was making a bunch of like really stupidly specific highlight videos, like Jalston Fowler preseason highlights, that kind of video. And I started the Twitter account really just to boost my YouTube profile. And I started using Twitter more to follow other sports pages and stuff. And I became familiar with the Brickwall Blitz account, which you probably know. And at the time, it was like him and like Marcus Mosher, who you might also know, were like the only guys. Maybe Ted Nguyen back then, but I don't know if he was doing it.
Oh
yet.
Yeah.
Were like the only guys I knew on Twitter that were making like threaded breakdowns with GIFs and like drawing annotations on the GIFs and things like that.
Right.
And when I was making my highlight videos for YouTube, I just started to notice that I was getting a lot more engagement and having more fun engaging on Twitter. So I started turning my focus more to Twitter. I was like, I saw these GIF breakdowns and thought I can do that. And no one's doing it for the Titans except for the one Mariota thread that this guy did. Maybe Kean Fahey was into it back then too, but he blocks everybody, so he doesn't count. So yeah, I just started making those GIF breakdown threads, and people started sharing them, and that led to followers. And then I would drop like a highlight video, which was the real thing I wanted to do on Twitter, and realized that like, although I had to be limited to 2 minutes, 20 seconds on Twitter, whereas YouTube, I was making like 6-minute videos, like in a way that's good. That's good for you. Like you don't need a
Right.
6-minute highlight video. Like come on, we've seen the play. Move to the next highlight.
Yeah.
So I got good at making shorter videos and posting them, and those would go crazy viral, and followers are coming. I just that's actually how I ended up getting the job working for NFL Media. Was they didn't care about my real work experience. They were like, "Wait, we love what you did on Twitter, so we're gonna hire
Yeah.
you."
Yeah, no, I mean it's really interesting, and we're still kind of in the midst of it as it's developing, but especially when it comes to like the media industry, the requirements and sort of like resume builders are really not not the traditional things for other jobs. You know, like it's funny how posting can literally be a career progressing type of thing. Um,
Yeah, it's
and I
crazy.
mean, as someone who yesterday spent an hour making a 2-minute highlight video of Aaron Brewer's best blocks from the
That was
Patriots
a great
game,
tape.
I
That was a
can
great tape.
I feel you on the oddly specific highlight video type of deal. Sometimes you're just like, man, what am I doing here?
Those guys need love though, so it's good to show them
Yeah,
the love.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, obviously the big conversation when it comes to the Titans has been injuries, and we can sit here and kind of sulk about how bad the injury luck has been, but I think that there's still a lot of really interesting conversations to be had. And um, believe it or not, the Titans have actually had starters on the field at times, and so there are things that we can kind of take away from that. So the first question I wanted to ask you is who has impressed you the most this season and who has disappointed you the most this season? And that can be a player, a coach, just like a general trend, whatever.
Disappointment. I'll go with disappointment first, and I got to go with Nate Davis
Mm-hmm.
because he was a real bright spot last year, and he just seemed to be on a very like upward trajectory in terms of his development track, just from where he started as a rookie in his frog stance to coming in mid-season that year and not playing well, to last year he got a couple of votes for all pro guard. This year he has been just so bad, and it looks mostly like mental, like his pickups on in pass protection on those when the stunts and twists that when other teams run those games on the defensive line, it's given the Titans O-line problems for years, but Nate Davis really struggled with that earlier this season. And then communication in the run game, like when to get off a combo block and climb to the next level, like his awareness just hasn't been there this year. And that leads me to who I've been most impressed with, which actually was Aaron Brewer. I thought Aaron Brewer's been better than Nate Davis in the few spot starts he's played this game or this year. Sorry, the game against the Rams. He was matching up with Aaron Donald, not all game long, but that was a matchup the Rams were trying to exploit with Aaron Donald
Mm-hmm.
against Aaron Brewer, and he held his own. I mean, he is an undersized guy from a small school who came in and played really well, and he played really well last week in relief of Nate Davis the last couple of weeks. So I am very impressed with that, and I think the Titans have a potential starter going forward if someone like Roger Saffold or Ben Jones were to be a cap casualty this offseason, or just an old age Malcolm Butler type of release this offseason. I think Aaron Brewer could step in and play any position on the interior of the O-line. I think they're great there. But what about Nate Davis? Like, can he be the guy that can they rely on him as a starter going into next season if he doesn't start to play better, if he even comes back from this concussion that he's been dealing with for a while? So I don't know. How do you feel about those guys?
I could not agree with you more about Nate Davis being the number one most disappointing player this season. And I think the point that you made about development track is so important because when I'm trying to evaluate whether it's like a college prospect or a young player in the NFL and kind of evaluate how they're developing and where I project them to be kind of by the end of their rookie contract, the development track is so important. You want guys to be consistently getting better. And I know, I know PFF grades aren't the end all be all, but if we look at Nate Davis, I've got it pulled up right here. Uh, Weeks 1 through 15 of his rookie season, he's the lowest graded guard in the NFL.
Wow.
Then week 16 through the conference championship game, which is 5 games, all grades above 65. So he really steps up. And then 2020, like you said, he took another massive step forward and was, in my opinion, I think Tennessee's best offensive lineman from a run blocking standpoint last season. Um, he's never been a good pass protector to me. I mean, you mentioned the stunts and twists, and he looks lost a lot of times in those situations. But
Yeah.
even just kind of in general, his technique, I mean, he'll lean too far forward, he'll get too far back on his heels. So he's never been a great pass protector, but it was kind of the situation of like, all right, we have this borderline liability in pass protection, but he's going to make up with it by adding so much value in the run game. He's going to pull off these insane reach blocks that no one else in the offensive line can pull off. And yeah, this season it's a lot of people have asked me like, why has Nate Davis taken such a massive step back in pass blocking? And my answer is like, he hasn't really that much. He's just never been a good pass protector.
Yeah.
You're
Interesting.
you're kind of noticing it now because he's not adding that value in the run game to make up for it. He's one thing that's interesting that Nate Davis has kind of struggled with, which you wouldn't expect for like an athletic interior lineman, is getting to the second level under control. He really has a difficult time kind of like slowing down and squaring up with a linebacker as he's getting to the second level. That's something that I've noticed a lot this year. But yeah, I would agree that Nate Davis has been a huge disappointment, and that kind of brings me to what I think is another big conversation as we start to look forward into next offseason, which we probably shouldn't with a playoff team, but whatever.
Right.
But like, there's the potential to have a ton of change up on the offensive line, sort of like a musical chairs kind of situation. You look at Taylor Lewan, you could save 13 million by cutting him. I don't think they should. I think he's been a lot better than kind of the general consensus. 10 million by cutting Roger Saffold. Obviously, Ben Jones is a free agent. Nate Davis has not played that well, and Quessenberry has actually played really well. But it's kind of like, do we trust that? Do we really trust a 32, whatever his age is, year old David Quessenberry at right tackle? So there's a lot of unknowns, and it is nice that we have this piece in Aaron Brewer that maybe if we make all our signings and draft picks and it turns out that we can't shore up that right guard spot, we have a guy that we feel good that we can start him there. But what's kind of your take if we look from Ben Jones out left? What's your opinion on maybe if there's someone that you think we should move on from or anything having to do with that?
I kind of agree with your assessment there. I think Lewan is still the best offensive lineman on the team, and he's dealt with plenty of issues. And anytime he makes a mistake or misses a block or gets beat by a rusher, like, it's posted everywhere and highlighted by everyone. So it's like, you don't see the plays where he's dominating 95% of the snaps and not getting beat. But I think Ben Jones is a must retain. Get him back. I think he wants to be here. They want him here. It's not just about what he does during a play. It's what he does at the line before a play. I mean, he's the guy that calls all the protections. He knows all the plays, everyone's role in a play, not just the offensive line. This is something Taylor Lewan's talked about before, like when Tannehill calls a play in the huddle and Ben Jones will look over at Taylor and be like, if we hold our blocks for an extra beat this play, we're scoring a touchdown. And it's like that kind of little thing, psychological thing that you don't think much about, has a big impact in the game, I think, and especially on key plays like that, in those moments where you do have a big play happen. It's because you have leaders on the offense like Ben Jones. So I think they need Ben Jones. And I don't think you cut Taylor Lewan. Maybe look at restructuring a contract if he's open to the conversation. I don't know how much longer Taylor Lewan himself is going to want to play, especially with the concussions he's suffered in his career in the season, and his family. We know his family is really important to him. We know he has other interests and pursuits, obviously with the podcast and things. So like, I don't know if he feels like he needs to play for a long time. But I do think he wants to prove that he is the league's best left tackle. Whether or not anyone believes that is a different story. But when it comes to Roger Saffold, that's where I start to hesitate. He's the oldest of the group. He's making a lot of money. There's no dead cap, if I'm correct, or if so, very little.
I think it's like we save 12 million, 2 million dead cap, something like that.
Yeah, so very little dead cap there and a lot of savings to be had. And he seems to get hurt. He's been better the last couple of weeks or so, but he seems to get hurt for a few plays almost every single game. So how much longer is his body really going to hold up for a full season? I think that's something John Robinson will be evaluating. And we've seen the way this front office treats players who are aging on big contracts, even if they are still being somewhat productive, like Jarrell Casey at the time, is they get shipped out or released. So I think that could be the fate of Saffold this year. And in my opinion, you bring back Questenberry, you got to spend another. Well, Dylan Radins, TBD on Dylan Radins, right? I mean, this could be a total bust of a pick, or it could be somebody who surprises everyone next year and is like adding an extra second round pick to next year's draft, which they don't have because they traded it for Julio Jones. So, the right tackle, I think you bring back Questenberry, you let Radins and him compete on that side. You bring back Nate Davis, obviously, to be your right guard and just cross your fingers that he figures it out. And then from center to out left, it's Ben Jones, Aaron Brewer, left guard, Taylor Lewan, left tackle.
Yeah, I generally agree with that. I mean, I think with Taylor Lewan, you're absolutely right. He's kind of a lightning rod for criticism because he has the podcast and he's kind of outspoken and all that stuff. I mean, even when it's not Taylor Lewan's fault. I mean, the Titans could give up a sack from the right side and, you refresh your timeline and it's like, oh, Taylor Lewan needs to spend some more time watching film and less time, working on his podcast or whatever. Yeah. So I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism. To me, as it stands today, I think Roger Saffold is the clear cut candidate of those two. And I think Ben Jones, you do try to bring back. The thing with trying to improve an offensive line is that you want to minimize the amount, the number of changes that you make because it's a very chemistry driven position group. Even if we were to upgrade at all 5 positions on the offensive line, it still really wouldn't be a great idea to make that many changes. I want to change one, maybe two spots and then kind of reevaluate and then add here and there. So yeah, it's definitely something that I want to slow play. And I do I have been really impressed with Aaron Brewer, but a guard combo of Nate Davis and Aaron Brewer would be one of the smallest guard combos in the NFL. And one of the, I don't know how to phrase this, but one of the biggest disparities in run blocking and pass blocking probably ability in the NFL. Yeah. I mean, like Aaron Brewer run blocking, like you get him out on the move on outside zone. He's great, but he's probably the smallest guard in the NFL. So he can get kind of overwhelmed at times. But yeah, and then I think you can probably get Questenberry back for cheap. So you definitely roll with him. The thing with Radins, who's
and Lamb, you got Lamb on a 2-year deal, so he'll be back as well.
Yeah, that's true. The thing with Radins, who's kind of like the X factor in the whole conversation, is that I really think his best spot in the NFL might be left tackle. You
left see tackle.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people, which is what he played in college. You see a lot of people, people that talk about the offensive line, like Brandon Thorne, for example, has talked a lot about how difficult and underrated how difficult it is, the transition from left tackle to right tackle and vice versa is, because a lot of people think that it's just like Madden where you just, changed them on the depth chart and they have the exact same overall. But I mean, it really is like learning to write with the other hand. And it was so weird to me. I mean, you watch Dylan Radins' college film and you look up any scouting report of Dylan Radins, and your first takeaway is going to be, wow, this guy gets into his pass sets so smooth. I mean, it's like he's been doing this since he was in the womb. Like he is on his shit, And then you look at that preseason game against Tampa Bay where he's on the right side and Joe Tryon just abuses him. And it's like, this guy looks like he has never played tackle before in his life. So I would be really interested to see if he could kind of have a reclamation project at left tackle. History tells us, though, that when a team drafts a tackle and then he doesn't work out there and they move him inside, those guys usually aren't moving back outside. So it might just be that he's a guard going forward.
Saffold was drafted as a left tackle.
I didn't know that.
Couldn't cut it outside, and he tried to play left tackle for 2 or 3 years, and then they moved him inside, and he was a Pro Bowler, like all pro level player from there. So I think I don't know if he ever made a Pro Bowl actually, but Pro Bowl level.
Yeah, right.
That could be Raiden. I mean, Aaron Brewer may be destined to be a 6th lineman who comes in for one game at a time when needed, or a few snaps here and there. And that would be a great player, a very valuable piece to have, because injuries happen in every single game for every team. So that could be his best role, and that would still be a great place to have found a player undrafted free agent style. And then maybe Dylan Radins is your left guard when you really do the inevitable release of Roger Saffold. And then you just have to spend another high draft pick on a right tackle and cross your fingers and hope it works out.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because tackle and edge rusher are two of the positions that the NFL has kind of like figured out how to scout. Compared to other positions, you don't see a lot of late round gems there. It's very very dependent on thresholds with athleticism. Like you kind of need to have 34-inch arms or whatever it is. So it's like I would feel a lot better about a first round tackle than I would a third round tackle. But I don't know if I have the stamina for another first round tackle, honestly. But
it would show a lot of like patience from John Robinson's perspective to do that if he were to spend a first round pick, because they don't have a second. They could trade back and try to grab like a late first. They're going to be in a late first position, so it's going to be interesting.
My answer every time somebody asks me who we should draft at whatever draft pick is trade back. I'm the king of trading back, getting more picks. I want to move on to Ryan Tannehill. Do you view Tannehill's statistical regression as a cause for concern going forward, or do you think that it's just kind of the inevitable result of having weapons as bad as we've had?
I do think that it is not a cause for concern. I do think it's more a result of playing with players who not only are not as talented at like getting open and catching the ball, but like literally don't know what to do on any given play. Right. And it's not just that Tannehill, it's not like, oh, that player didn't know what to do on that play, so Tannehill threw a pick. It's like now every time Tannehill drops back with that player on the field, there is a little hesitation. Is this guy going to be there when I throw the ball? Is he going to be in the right spot? Or do I need to look to my second read and then he's not open and then check it down for a 3-yard gain on 3rd and 9 or some dumb. They run that crap on 2nd and 8 like every other series, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Jeff Swaim, but go ahead.
He's kind of like added like some Mariota tendencies, almost just the hesitancy. I mean, I remember when Ryan Tannehill first came in that Chargers game. I mean, it was literally the first throw, that kind of that back shoulder seam route to Jonnu Smith. And my takeaway was like, man, this guy has nothing to lose. He's just coming out here slinging it. There was a play, I think it was like a 2nd and 9 maybe against New England. Tannehill gets pressured. He rolls out to his right, and he's got Des Fitzpatrick wide open. I mean, for like 3 seconds, just kind of on the back half of a deep crossing route. And Tannehill's looking at him, kind of just like hesitating, and he just doesn't pull the trigger, ends up scrambling for like 4 yards. And it's like, I feel like Tannehill, with receivers on the field that he's comfortable with, is just firing that in there.
There's also the factor that they've turned the ball over 9 times in 2 games, which is unbelievably impossible to do. Yeah. And they've done it. And I think that it's not that he's playing scared, although he might be playing a little scared. It's that he's playing, I think, conservative, knowing that they they don't have the ability to generate explosive plays with the guys on the field the same way they do when you have Derrick Henry and AJ Brown and Julio Jones when he was out there. Those guys, AJ Brown hasn't had. I mean, he hasn't been the same player this year that he was last year because I think he's again dealing with injuries and other things, COVID and all that. But the ability to like catch a 10-yard slant or hook route and break 3 tackles and turn into a 50-yard play, or Derrick Henry's ability to take any run to the house isn't there, although we saw them run the ball for 270 yards last week. So maybe that's not the biggest issue. But I think because they don't have those players, Tannehill knows, like, all right, we got to be methodical. We got to get down the field. We got to make the most of every play, every possession. We can't turn the ball over. And sometimes when you're thinking about it so much, and they must be with 9 turnovers in 2 games, that sometimes it's like one of those things where you like self-fulfilling prophecy thing where like, I can't turn it over. And then you turn it over.
Right. Yeah.
I think
the passing game, there's nothing easy that's coming from the passing game. There's, I mean, it's like you said, there's none of that just, easy play action dig route over the middle. That's an easy explosive play. It's got to be, really precise, a lot of timing routes and stuff like that. And
like that Nick Westbrook catch on the sideline was the back shoulder thing. That was an unbelievable play for those guys to execute. But like Nick Westbrook was not open at all on that play. It was a perfect throw and great timing understanding by the receiver. Like those plays are not that sustainable to make when it's maybe Nick Westbrook is going to turn into something, but like, I'm not expecting that. So
I kind of view Nick Westbrook's ceiling as Alan Lazard, but as an Indiana fan, I love seeing Westbrook, having some success. Who was open on that play, and I would encourage people to go back and watch Des Fitzpatrick screaming wide open down the left sideline. Not blaming Tannehill for missing that, just wanted to point that out. But yeah,
and Fitzpatrick had a really nice catch. His only catch in that game was really pretty impressive.
That route, the route that he ran, I think the Patriots were in cover 3 and the corner was trying to keep that outside leverage. Des does a really good job of just attacking his leverage and cutting his route off. The Houston game, there were a lot of interception, or I think 2 of his interceptions were just a direct result of Tannehill staring down his receiver for the entire route.
And not seeing a linebacker dropping. It's crazy.
Yeah. And you had that, what should have been an interception by Kyle Van Noy against the Patriots. And, I'm not trying to just make excuses for Tannehill. Like, obviously he is a veteran quarterback that can't be doing that, but that was never really an issue that he had last season or in 2019. And my best guess for why you kind of see that popping up more is that he doesn't have that trust in his brain that he can look off of this safety and then immediately come back to this read on the right, and he knows his receiver is going to be in the right spot. He's just mentally he doesn't have that confidence, and so that's potentially why you see him staring guys down a lot more.
That's a great point. Do you ever watch the games live and think to yourself, like, man, do the Titans have one pass play, dig route? That's it? Like, can we do anything else?
They do. For the first, so I kind of
like, I know that's not true. Just like sometimes it feels like
it. You've seen some of like all the charting that I do. I chart like passing concepts that they run. And it's really interesting. Through the first 6 weeks, they tried to run this like wheel route, like wheel seam combo. They ran it like 8 times, didn't work once, and I don't think they've ran it since. Every time they play action boot, I literally think it's 100% of the time they play action boot, they're just running flood to that side. So yeah, I mean, and that can kind of get us into talking about the coordinators. But how do you think that Todd Downing has performed through 12 weeks?
I think it's been up and down, but better than people think, and especially given the circumstances, given all the guys who've been out. But I think, like, for the most part, he's done a nice job of maintaining balance. There was that drive last game where it was like, I believe it was 19-13, or maybe it was even only 16-13. Was that ever a score? 19-13, I think. And they threw the ball, they called a pass, and Tannehill scrambled for a few yards, and then they threw the ball again. And they'd run the ball so well in the first half, and it was a 3-and-out possession there in a big moment in the game where they could have gone down and taken a lead. And that was the drive before they like ran it on 8 straight plays or something like that, and marched all the way down the field in 14 plays, get to the 2-yard line, and Tannehill throws the end zone interception. But I think that moment showed. Well, I was impressed in that moment because the 3 pass plays in a row, I was like, what are we doing? And then the next possession, commitment right back to the run game, and it worked. And sticking with what working. I think a lot of what Arthur Smith was so successful with was, even when it's like a 2-possession game in the second half, continuing to run the ball, because that's what the Titans offense is based around, and continuing to hit those play action shots. I think that there are moments where I'm like, he's still feeling this out, and especially with these players. I love the idea in the red zone of running that screen to Westbrook Ikine for the touchdown. That was horribly. I mean, the officials, I don't know what you're doing on that play.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that Vrabel had to throw the challenge flag is just such a disgrace to the officiating, but whatever.
Totally agree.
Those kinds of plays in the red zone are what you need right now. And I talked about this on my podcast with Justin Mello, but like, the Titans don't have guys who can go win a matchup one-on-one in the red zone consistently when the field is that squished and there's safeties and linebackers clogging all the passing lanes, that they have to rely more on these designed plays, these screens and these like misdirection, like the gimmicky crap. They ran it once and they got a touchdown on it. And the next time they got to the red zone, obviously they fumbled a bunch of times, but they didn't go back to the gimmicky stuff, the design stuff, which like is there to help your guys who aren't as talented make a play and get open. And that's what they need. So I would like to see Todd Downing rely more on that with the guys he has healthy. Now, when you get A.J. Brown and Julio Jones back, and Julio Jones could return for Jacksonville, I don't know if he'll be healthy, but they have the chance to activate him. That would be huge for this offense and somebody that they need right now, because like, you can't keep running out the guys you're running out. Maybe Golden Tate gets active for that game, but I think the bye week is going to be huge for this team and for Todd Downing to take a chance to evaluate himself, because first-year offensive coordinator in this offense, he's only been an offensive coordinator once before, in an offense that was like heavily dictated to him in Oakland back in the day. So I think this week is huge for him to look at what he's done so far this year and what's really been working and what hasn't, because for someone who's in the first time in their position to not have a chance to look back and review until week 13, that's a tough challenge for him to face. So, especially with all the injuries he's been juggling. So I think for the most part, he's done a better job than people give him credit for. Like, but yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like no matter who the offensive coordinator is, I'm always in the position of defending them, because I just think a lot of people criminally,
it's an easy thing to point to when you don't know.
Criminally underestimate how difficult play calling is in the NFL. You know, I've said this before, but it's like Todd Downing could literally invent a new run concept. He could get an 8-1 numbers advantage out on the right sideline. They run that call. If Jeff Swaim gets blown back 4 yards and pancaked, and Henry gets hit in the backfield, you know, it's going to be a loss of 3 yards, and it could still be a great play call, but ultimately guys have to win one-on-ones. You know, players do matter. Players' performance matters. And, you know, I think there's definitely things to be critical with. I think that, I mean, the Cardinals game got him, he really got off on the wrong foot. I mean, first play of the game, if you were to ask anybody who really knew anything about the Titans offense, like what would you say the Titans first play of the season would be? Like, I would probably say, I don't know, outside zone to the left. That's what it was. Outside zone to the left, -3 yards. Next play, fake outside zone to the left, boot, Chandler Jones crashes on it, sack. You know, it is extremely predictable. I think a lot of the stuff that he's done in their run game has been, I've been really impressed with. they've been doing some like pin pull stuff. I don't know if you've noticed that I
Yeah,
never
they've
really
been
saw
changing.
from Arthur
Yeah,
Smith. A lot of the ways that they've been uh, mixing in some of the gap change ups that
yeah,
they have
up the
been
middle,
doing.
they've been doing a lot more power stuff than they were ever with
They
Arthur Smith.
and I think back when Derrick Henry was healthy, the way that they involved him in the passing game, I was really impressed with, because it's one thing to just be like, okay, Derrick Henry's a good player, we're going to pass him the ball more, but they were getting him involved in a lot of innovative ways. There was a sequence against Seattle where they ran kind of like the classic Shanahan Yankee concept that was just play act, like max protect, play action, hit Julio on a deep crosser or whatever. Um, and then they come out in that exact same formation. They and I'll put this on the screen on YouTube when I post this. They come out in the exact same formation. They run play action, and then these linebackers that bite on the play action, they're like, "Oh shit, I got to get back and cover this hook." So they take like 12-yard drops, and then they slip Henry out for a little screen off of that, and he's got 10 yards before he's even touched. So just
Yeah.
little stuff like that, I think I've been really impressed with. But I do agree with you with the red zone passing. I mean, they ran flood against New Orleans on that play that should have been an interception, and they had Aaron Brewer running a deep out. I mean, and I think that's like a bad play design, but it's also kind of a testament to how injured they are as far as
Yeah.
receivers and tight ends and
Well,
everything.
last week they did a thing where they like came out in a hugely heavy package to try to get New England in a heavy package. And then they like split everyone out and go to empty backfield
Mm-hmm.
and throw that fade to Pruitt that he should have caught. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really, really well defended by Kyle Van Noy. But it's like in that moment, it's like the idea, the theory of it versus the reality of it. I like the idea in theory of trying to get a team in their big package personnel and then asking those big bodies to defend a spread pass concept. But in actuality, New England has really athletic linemen and linebackers like Kyle Van Noy who can drop into coverage no problem and defend a play like that against Michael Pruitt, who is an underrated pass catcher, but isn't, I mean, he's not Travis Kelce out there, right?
Yeah.
So, or even like a Pat Fryermuth would be a nice type of player for the Titans to have. Or maybe like if Anthony Firkser could figure out how to be a productive player again, that would be nice. But
Yeah.
it's those kinds of theory versus execution and reality that I think he's still trying to figure out. Like call that play next week against Jacksonville and it's a touchdown guaranteed. But against
Mm-hmm.
New England, one of the best defenses in the league, you have to be more aware in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately the thing with Todd Downing is like, it's hard for me to watch film on a game and see the Titans in empty with Tommy Hudson, Des Fitzpatrick, Nick Westbrook-Akina, and Anthony Firkser and Dontrell Hilliard as your 5 receivers, and be like, Todd Downing really needs to do a better job here. I mean, like, how are you supposed to scheme up a passing game with those as your receivers? But yeah, I mean, we'll see how he can kind of adjust as they get healthier. The last topic that I want to go over is Shane Bowen, who I expect will be probably a more positive conversation. What are your thoughts on how Shane Bowen's done this year?
I think the defense looks really good. Like, way, obviously, everyone knows that. But even in the last couple of games that they didn't win, the defense is the only reason they had a chance late in either game. And they ended up giving up, 36 to New England, which, like, okay, the defense must have had a bad game. But, like, in reality, when 19 points given up through halfway through the third quarter and the offense just can't do anything and continues to turn the ball over, I
Right.
think leads to a misleading result. It was really the defense. The run game has been really impressive. And I think the way that Harold Landry has been used in the pass rush as a guy, this happened more often when Bud Dupree was healthy, but as like a off the line rusher who can kind of pick his spot and find his
Yeah.
gap, had been really effective and really unlocked Harold Landry. I think that's a big credit to Shane Bowen, who was the outside linebackers coach before, knew Landry's strength, gets promoted to this position, and now we're seeing Landry used more creatively like this. I don't think that's a coincidence, and I think it's a credit to Shane Bowen. Kevin Byard is back to being a all-star stud safety after a down year last year. I think that's because everyone in the defense has a better understanding of their job, what they're supposed to do, which allows Kevin Byard to have more trust in his teammates on the field, whether it's Christian Fulton or Chris Jackson or Chris Jones. Like, it doesn't matter who's been out there. They've all been effective in coverage. And I think that's because Shane Bowen has been able to not be in the outside linebacker meeting rooms, but been able to go to all the position groups on the defense and say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. When the offense does this, like, you have to do, like, and everyone just seems to know what they're doing, which, as Mike Vrabel always says, know what to do, play fast and aggressive. It allows them to all play fast and aggressive because they know what to do. And I'm not like, I don't really know all that much about exactly what kind of coverage looks Bowen's been calling and how he has been disguising. I know the Titans are high up in the list of like the stat they track where it's PFF stat where they move the coverage changes after the snap. But I will just say I think he's done a great job of making sure everyone knows what to do and therefore allowing the really good players, Simmons, Landry, Byard, to be the best versions of themselves.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I actually have the coverage tendencies pulled up. And I think if you look at how their coverage tendencies have kind of fluctuated throughout the year, it's one of the biggest areas that I've been impressed with Shane Bowen, and it's flexibility. Because if we look at weeks 1 through 5, where the secondary was for the most part pretty healthy, they're running cover 1 39% of the time, which is the exact same rate that they ran it in 2020. That's kind of what they want to be as a single high man coverage team. And the exact moment in the Bills game where Caleb Farley tears his ACL, they move Chris Jackson outside, then Chris Jackson gets injured. Right on the dime, they were like, all right, we cannot play man coverage. And weeks 6 to 9, those 4 games without Christian Fulton, they ran cover 3 33% of the time, cover 4 19% of the time, cover 1 only 18% of the time. So that's a 20% drop. And then weeks 10 to 12, Christian Fulton gets back. They're back to running cover 1 32% of the time. So I think the ability to adapt as your personnel changes has been really great. What you mentioned about using Harold Landry as kind of a chess piece where he can play almost any spot in the front 7, that was one of the immediate things that jumped out to me. And a lot gets made about, a lot of people complain about Harold Landry dropping off into coverage. And, I don't want to man up on slot receivers, but when it comes to playing zone coverage in those underneath zones, he's actually pretty effective. And if you can line him up at off-ball linebacker occasionally and have him play pass coverage, and then you want to line him up, kind of, mug him up over the A-gap or do whatever, and the offense treats him as a linebacker, and then you send him looping around on that stunt and they're not expecting it. I think, when you have a versatile skill set like that, you need to put that versatility on film so that offenses will respect the versatility, So I think the way that he's designed the pass rush has been very impressive. And I think
it's the Clowney role. He's playing the Clowney role that Clowney played when Vrabel was Houston's defensive coordinator for that one season. So it's interesting that they didn't even use really Clowney like that much for the games he was healthy last year.
Yeah.
And they never tried using Landry like that until this year. So I wonder if Bowen went to Vrabel and was like, hey, remember how you used Clowney back in Houston when Bowen was there as like a whatever he was some like coaching intern or something. And I don't know, maybe that's how that happened. I'm just
I mean, I think when you look at last year, I do think it's tough. It would be tough to take Harold Landry out from like they couldn't really afford to not play Harold Landry as an edge rusher because they just didn't have the guys. Like, okay, so now we don't really have the luxury of playing Harold Landry as this hybrid role and then throwing Jack Crawford and Derek Roberson out as our 2 starting edges and like expecting them to win blocks. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So I think that's been the biggest thing. Jeffrey Simmons has taken a massive step forward forward rushing the passer, but off the edge, it's not that they have like this number one, Miles Garrett, TJ Watt, dominant pass rusher. The
And
floor at
Harold
every position
Landry's
has just
not that
risen.
guy either. Harold
I
Landry's not that guy either, but he can be a great player on a defense. He's not going to be, I think with Bud Dupree's in like new injury, the reason Landry's production's kind of dropped off the last couple games is because he's had to play more of a traditional edge role, and he's just not as good at generating pressure from that spot. And that doesn't make him a bad edge rusher or a bad player on the defense. It just means he's not Myles Garrett, and he never will be.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation about whether or not to pay Harold Landry, I am more than happy to put off into until the offseason because
Franchise. He's getting
I'm
franchised.
firmly in the franchise tag camp.
Book it. It's happening. Book it. It's happening. For sure.
I 100% agree. Well, Justin, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a great conversation. Let everybody know where they can find you, what you've been up to.
Yeah, at Titans Film Room. At Titans Film Room on Twitter and Instagram. If you go over there, I don't post as much there, but whatever. Titans Film Room on YouTube. Broadway Sports Media. I'm not officially involved in Broadway Sports Media anymore, but they're all my buddies, so check them out. I'm still got a podcast on Broadway Sports Media. The Music City Audible. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. And check out the NFL media content I produce. NFL Fantasy Football Show. The Around the NFL podcast. You can hear me on there some Sunday nights randomly, especially when the Titans play. Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and I will put all those links in the description. Make sure to check Justin out. Justin, have a great day, night, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks. You too. It's been fun.